It's time to present Scott DuPont to bring you another episode of Finance Your Movie with tips and strategies to help you get your money to tell your story. It's time!
All right, back with another episode. I'm thrilled to be here with James Pacitti with Pacitti Law Firm in Beverly Hills. How are you, James?
I'm doing great, Scott. How you doing?
Excellent. Um, Real quick disclaimer here. I've worked with James in the past, and I just want to say you were very, very responsive. We had that issue that came up where we need kind of a last minute clearance in order to get a
Yeah.
distributor attached, and your rates were more than fair, and you got the job done. So thank you. I can't recommend you enough.
I appreciate that, Scott. We're glad we're able to help, especially under the time constraints that you had in that project, which I
Yeah,
guess happens a lot.
yeah. Really appreciate that. So anyway, why don't we start off by saying, how did James get here? Because going back, I don't know, 30 years or something like that, you were in one of my acting classes at Art's Sake with Yvonne Soher in Orlando, Florida.
Yeah, that's a little less than that. You're making me old. I've been a lawyer for about 30 years, but yeah, it's about 20 some odd years ago. You and I met. And yeah, my journey to being an entertainment attorney was a little different than probably most attorneys who just go to law school and then go work at some firm and or something. So at that when I met you, Scott, I was as you may remember, I was at a big firm. I was a trial attorney and a litigator. And one of my colleagues had recommended that I take acting classes to help with trial work, which seems like a strange thing at first, but then as he was taking acting
Interesting.
classes, yeah, because when you start to think about it, well, that makes a lot of sense as he explained it and justified it, is that in every trial, there's an emotion, obviously, and there's an emotional thread. And, if you can get people here, you have a lot better chance here. So, he made a convinced case that, it'll help you with that aspect of trial because like you can be really good at cross-examination and, the law and rules of evidence and stuff. But, in the end, it's about convincing a bunch of strangers to find in favor of your clients. And so obviously emotion is a part of that. So that got me into acting classes. And from there, what had happened is, as you mentioned, it was Yvonne Suhor was a very well-known acting teacher. She had gotten a call. How I ended up doing what I'm doing now and working with you, amongst others, is that she had gotten a call from an independent film production. They were looking for a production attorney, and she didn't know any other lawyers really. So she asked me about it. And even though I wasn't doing that type of work at that time, I was a trial attorney and a litigator. For whatever reason, sure, I could do it. And I then, fortunately, one of my partners at the firm I was at had some experience in that. So together we did the production legal on this film, which is now this is going back more than 20 years. And that began my journey to eventually where I segued out of doing trial work to where now just purely transactional entertainment law, mostly assisting independent film producers in development, finance, production, and distribution of their projects.
Fascinating story. I never knew that how you. I just kind of
Mm.
thought you were an actor and then later went to law school. But anyway, fascinating. So let's jump right in here. Why why is it, in your opinion, so important, especially for first and second time filmmakers, to get an entertainment lawyer on board early? And what would you say to a filmmaker on a smaller budget, let's just say under 500K, who thinks they might not be able to afford an attorney?
Well, it's really a question you can't afford not to have an attorney in some capacity. And the reason for that is that everything in the end about project and every independent film project, any media project, whether you're trying to do a pilot for a television series or a feature length independent film, a documentary film, your objective is distribution. And if you have all the rights that you need to distribute it, then you would have done all of it for nothing. And so what it's vital is that you have to have what's called clean chain of title. And chain of title is basically all the documents, releases, agreements. Basically, it's all the collection of rights that a a filmmaker must have and then to be able to distribute their project and convey it to a third party. So the issue becomes is why that you need an attorney early on is because you have to make sure that every step of the way throughout the process of development, production, post-production, that you have secured all the necessary rights. Because film is really it's just a collection of a number of contributions by many people, sometimes thousands of people. When you're talking about your big studio features, you have thousands of people do it. So it's important that every part, every link in your chain, your chain of title, every link has to be there. If you're missing any link, then you can't distribute your project, because what will happen is you won't be able to demonstrate to an errors and omissions or E&O insurer that, and which will enable you to get E&O insurance. And if you can't get E&O insurance, you can't get distribution. So it's important that you don't want to make, be penny wise, dollar
repeat
foolish.
that last sentence once again, because it's so important.
It really is, Scott. It is so. You have to have errors and omissions or E&O insurance get distribution. Distributor is not going to touch you if you don't have or can't get E&O insurance, which is basically just liability insurance. So the idea being that if the production's sued, there's someone to defend the production. And the insurance is conveyed after an insurer feels confident that this production has all the rights, because insurance companies don't like paying out money for defense of lawsuits or for claims. So that tells a distributor, okay, they have all the rights that they need, because there's this insurance policy that will, in the event that there is a claim, there will be a defense of it. And if it's meritorious, it can be paid out. But it's absolutely essential, because if you don't have all the rights, you can't get insurance. You can't get insurance. You can't get distribution.
So do you have any horror stories, or any horror stories in your firm that you were able to fix that went over that hurdle?
We've been able to fix these problems that were horror stories that I guess you could say had a happy ending, as much as horror stories have. There's one in particular that I'm thinking of that's relatively recent. It goes along the lines of what you're asking about, why get involved early. There's this production we have, one of our clients, and ended up being a multi-million-dollar production, and it was based on an original script that wasn't based on any other existing IP. However, what got tricky is that in production, this film is already in production, it became discovered that the script was based upon a idea of another party, but one that was expressed in a tangible fixed form. Using those words for it, because that's what confers copyright. So someone, basically a friend, provided, I think it was a few paragraphs of an original story that this person based a script upon. And the rights weren't secured at that. So
Wow.
that's something that goes back. Yeah, because then your chain of title at the beginning is a problem. So in those circumstances, this is going back to what you're saying about why you need it early, because you have to know, and before you have spent ideally any money, but certainly before you raise money for investors and such, you have to make sure your chain of title from the outset is absolutely rock solid. So obviously the foundation of any independent film project is your script. And in addition to something like that maybe people don't think about, he's emailed me this idea. I wrote a few paragraphs, and then I wrote the script based upon it. Your friend has copyright protection, and he might be your friend right now, but then when you get a bunch of money for that script, he might not be your friend anymore because he didn't get money.
Or here's what I'm thinking about
too.
Here's what I'm thinking about. Let's just say that specific example you just brought up, it would have been a lot smarter for them to pay couple $1,000 for you to review that, get the clean shaded title all sorted out before you start. Because if I'm that person that created that story, or I have any attachment to it, and I see this multi-million-dollar film in the can going to a distributor, I can name my price. I can say, hey, I'll settle for $10,000 or $50,000 or $100,000. I mean, they got you, right?
Well, that's the problem, is that the leverage that exists then,
it's a leverage.
Fortunately, this situation got resolved and it ended up being completely fine, but it was much more difficult, as attorneys. It is much extremely difficult and quote, i.e., expensive for us to solve a problem on the back end of the problem instead of before it happens. So in that example, if when you're talking about just before the script's even purchased, you really drill down and you make sure that, all right, what is this? Where does the idea of this script come from? Did you base on this? You base on that? Because we've had situations too where a similar thing where someone wrote a script, the original script, and then later they're telling us, oh, this is based upon a true story. It's a friend of mine. You're like, oh, back up.
Yeah.
What when did that happen? And they say, oh, it's fine. He's cool with it. Like,
Yeah, he's
again,
cool with it.
to your point, Scott, he's cool with the round he sees. Well, wait a minute, this movie's making millions of dollars. That's clearly portraying me. They might find it defamatory. Hey, that's my life story. And you invaded my rights of privacy. So, you have those situations, which one of the more common ones, Scott, is that, but they don't sometimes realize this when folks like they have a script and maybe they wrote the script originally, a filmmaker, it is their they wrote the script originally, but then they have others contribute to it. They have others like, hey, can you read my script? And a friend, another writer friend, make some significant changes to it, but they have no agreements. They don't have a writer
Yeah, you got to have
collaboration
agreements for
agreement.
everything.
And that's the point, right? That's exactly right, Scott. Everything you does, if any filmmakers out there watching this come away from nothing else from this, other than anyone who contributes to what you're creating, there has to be an agreement for it, even if it's one page and it's clear. And ideally, it's complicated than that, but sometimes at least a one-page agreement that says you got this, I paid you for it, et cetera, and you're going to get whatever it might be, something, because down the road, like you said, when now they see, oh, this thing has got finance, or this thing has distribution, oh, this is successful, this is on Netflix. Now it's now you have a
Well,
big
look,
problem.
look,
Like,
look what happened to our friends. We were both in Orlando, Florida, the time that the Blair Witch Project was in theaters. It had just eclipsed $100 million, this micro budget film, and you and I saw the lawsuits come out of the woodwork.
yeah, and actually, there's a most recent one too, where the filmmakers they again were making some claims about it because they're
Yeah,
resuscitating it. So it's one of those things that
it
because
happens
here's
when
what it is
when
like.
you start making money. That's when people sue you.
Well, and that's what people have to realize. Are like it's at the beginning, at the inception of something, everyone's friends and they're buddy, and it seems like everything's okay. Money is a funny thing, and when that becomes an issue, when people start something is making money, that now they feel grieved that their contribution is not hasn't been addressed, or they haven't been paid. So again, talking about how the attorneys early on, it's something that you have a conversation, even if it's into a smaller production, you really have us involved because it's one of those things, again, it's penny wise dollar foolish, because it's better to spend a little bit of money at the outset and or throughout the production, relatively a little bit of money compared to the overall budget, and be able to project than spend your entire budget and being able to do nothing with it.
100%.
So that's
So
it's
speaking,
one of those things that people, yeah, they think it's a luxury, but it's not a luxury having attorneys involved with the project. It's a necessity.
yeah. So speaking of money, you know a lot of investors. You've had a lot of successful clients who have gotten their films financed. Talking to our audience here, who maybe this is their first or second film, or maybe it's a lower budget film under $1 million, thinking from the potential investor's viewpoint, try to put on their hat. You're the potential investor. Does it really make a difference, or does it really help in their viewpoint that they see an entertainment attorney's attached? Like maybe you're in the business plan, or they can reference you. Not that they're going to be calling you, but have you part of the team?
Well, I think certainly an investor is going to want to have that. They're going to see that there's a lawyer there because they know lawyers, we have our obligations, our profession, our ethical obligations. And also then they're going to feel more confident that things are being done. The idea, like we were alluding to earlier, about that, well, if I'm putting money in this film, is it because it's a tough investment under the best of circumstances. It's even tougher if it can't see the light of day because you don't have all the rights. So I would think, and I'm sure it happens, but I would think if an investor if I was representing an investor, which we sometimes do, if there's a project, there's no attorney involved, I'd like run. Because how do we know that the entity was formed properly? How do we know that the script, the underlying rights were obtained properly? That the, like I said, chain of title has been maintained. Anyone who's contributed to the project at the point where we're talking financing has had a proper agreement executed. You don't have those assurances. You just have some creatives who are well-meaning, but who don't know, the very complicated legal aspects of this. Just saying, "Oh no, we have everything." That's our huge red flag. And not to mention, something those listening should be aware of. You're talking about this is securities laws, federal and state securities laws. When you're asking people for money, and then they're going to get their money back based upon your efforts, no matter what you call them, that they are invested and it implicates state and federal securities laws, and you have to be very careful because there are potentially very serious consequences to not providing the proper documents and following the proper formalities required by state and federal law when you're taking money for people and they're going to rely upon you to pay back.
Yeah. So let's jump right into your clients now. You don't have to mention any specific names if you don't want to, but how have some of your clients actually raised the money? Because I've seen some of the posters in your office. I mean, these are real movies, real shows. And what are some of the traits and qualities of a successful producer?
Ah, there's we could talk a lot about that. I think in simple terms, you have to be persistent, you have to be passionate, because look, when you're talking about raising money from people who have money, and the people who have money, they probably are sophisticated. Well, they have to be what are called accredited investors, and that's something that you talk about in the context of investing. Who probably are successful in one type of business or another, so they're going to be savvy. Sometimes you have people who are just really wealthy and got the money, they inherited. But it's the point I'm getting at is that investing in a film versus real estate or the stock market or whatever is in of itself not probably a great idea. So if you're trying to convince people from just a pure monetary investment perspective to be involved in it, you got to be honest with them. But what's going to get them involved is your passion, is that you really believe in this project. Because like no one knows particular film is going to do. We see this all the time, even at the studio level. No one predicted Barbenheimer. Nobody predicted Sound of Freedom, that what the successor would do, that Sound of Freedom would do better than Indiana Jones, Dial of Destiny. So no one knows really anything. And whether it's a 500 indie film like the Blair Witch Project, you have a small indie film that, still is making money, or huge studio films with the biggest name actors that flop. So if you want someone to give money to the project, you're going to have to be persistent. You're going to have to be passionate about and those are two of the most important ones, because I've seen clients they're flying across the country. They're talking to anyone who will listen about their project that they have so much passion for that they have to make. And because you're trying to convince people, sometimes give you millions of dollars, at least thousands of dollars to make this. And so
Were those clients of yours who flew across the
it's
country?
not something you can sit there and say, because it wouldn't be honest to say, I guarantee. Oh, without a doubt. Yes. There's someone that, they're talking to people and they flew from California or to New York or to Texas or to Wyoming or wherever it was. If that's what they thought, to get down in front of that person, because, you can do a Zoom and you can get on the phone, but the passion to really convince someone and to make that connection with them. Because again, it kind of maybe circles back to what I was talking about, work and trial work, it's emotion that, because it's not, if you just do the math from purely perspective, like cold calculations, putting money in a feature film is not the best idea. It's a highly risky investment. You can put it in treasury bonds and make some money, and it's safe for the stock market and real estate generally. So you're convinced them it's about being a part of something, about creating art, about telling this story that's never been told, about creating something that's never existed before. And you convince someone that, because necessarily it's a great idea from a purely financial investment perspective, it's something that they get excited about doing.
Let's drill down a little bit about persistence, because obviously you're good friends. You've worked with some clients over and over again. Have they ever shared the types of numbers that they've reached out to? Like what kind of, obviously you can't just like call one or two people and get lucky. Oh yeah, here's $1 million. When you say persistence, are these people like just grinding away on the phone? Or are they just doing multiple flights a week? What is this persistence?
Yeah, it's just, you just keep talking to people who can put you in connection with a person who then maybe puts you in connection with another person. And then and if that person says yes or no, then you continue that conversation. If this person says yes, it's like, oh, do you have anyone else who you think might? And if they say no, then you maybe go back to the person who did the introductions, like, well, he said no, she said no. Is there someone else you can introduce me to? And you just keep on, you have to tap your sources. And it gets tricky because sometimes those sources are family members, they're friends, and maybe they don't become the direct source. But they say, you know what, I have this friend. He's really wealthy. He loves Hollywood, loves movies. Talk to him. And that's a lot of where it happens. It's just, someone refers you to someone who refers you to someone who refers you to someone. I've seen that where it's, you get into 4 or 5, 6, 7 degrees of from the person who introduced you initially to the person who ends up being one of your investors. And it's all varieties, all different industries, from people who inherited money, to people who are super savvy, business men or women. So it's
Interesting.
anybody who is again, it should be people who are like, I use the term accredited investor. That's something you Google and it has a specific meaning, because you shouldn't be taking money from people who can't really afford the loss of it, because that's one of the things that's going to be agreements that they sign. Ideally, that they have to realize there's a high risk. So those are the kind of people you want to get to. How you get to them, there's no set path. In some ways, it's easier nowadays because of social media and our ability to communicate, much like we're doing now, where you can have a face-to-face miles away, sort of a face-to-face. But yeah, it can be anywhere. It can be anywhere in the world, today, especially because of the technology that's available.
Awesome. Interesting. You talked about sometimes 3 or 4 or 5 degrees of separation. I'm guessing in those situations of your clients where they ultimately did get the money, each connection must have been super, super strong. Like you're having somebody who knows somebody very, very well, they trust. That person is going to refer to that person, I'm guessing.
Well, you mean the connection between these different people who you're being referred to?
Yeah, I mean, because it just to me makes common sense. If I go to my brother-in-law and he just doesn't have money, says, "Hey, Scott, I just don't have money, but I wish you all the best with your film. Talk to this guy." I'm guessing they're going to steer people where they have some sort of connection, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not always. There's some sort of connection. Sometimes it can be like, hey, this is my good friend, this is my cousin, this is my brother. This is a guy I worked with on a deal. They had one
What you
business
just
interaction.
said there to me makes a lot of sense. It's like, here's some guy off the street. I don't know if he's homeless or not, but hey, versus, hey, here's a guy I worked with, or here's a guy I've been friends with, right? Some kind of connection. That's what I'm trying to get to. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
guessing.
there's going to be that, and that's why it's also that you got to have that passion and persistence, because you have to, even if the person that you initially might interact with, or the various people you might interact with, even if they say no, it's your for it that they're going to say, like, this is something that's just not for me for one reason or another. But you know what? Let me put you in touch with so and so. And it's not that they're, more than likely not because they just want to push you off and dump you on someone else, that they don't like or something. It's that they, what, like, I like what you're saying. I just don't think it's for me for whatever reason, but talk to him or her. And then ends up being, they're like, well, then this person doesn't work out, but then they put you in touch with another person, because you have to impress everyone along the way. Because if you come off with, and this goes, we're continuing with the P's, have a plan, so you can be persistent, passionate. You got to have a plan, because these are business people. Generally speaking, you're going to be talking to business people, and they want to know, okay, how do you getting my money back? That's
Yeah.
really what they're, because yeah, they want to be involved in the
You
movie
got to
business.
have an answer.
That's
Even with the risk, you
yeah.
got to have a strategy.
Yeah, and it's got to be, and you be careful. Do not try, BS these people, because most of these people, like I said, they're going to be sophisticated. People have the kind of money to put into an independent film that they can lose it. They can afford to lose their entire investment. These are people who know what they're doing, and they have their own business. They're like, even though the film business, again, it's speculative. And you don't sit there and promise, I guarantee you get your money back. Never say those words. You'll lose credibility, and it's not true. Which you come across that this is somebody you believe in and with great passion, and you're getting them excited because people, they love storytelling, they love Hollywood. It's appeals to them on a different level. Again, it's here, more than it is up here. But again, still though, they don't feel like they're taken advantage of. They don't want to be made a fool. So like, well, tell me about this. How do you see, you want to make this film for $1 million? How do you get back, my money and anyone else who puts in it? How are you getting the money back? Now, doesn't mean that it's going to work, but you at least have a plan.
Yeah, you got to have an answer
So
for that question.
yeah, well, we think that we're gonna attach this actor, and sales agents have told us this actor on the UK and Germany. And then, since this particular type of genre, action adventure, for example, this does well here and here and here. So we think that we could do a limited theatrical release, and then that's going to drive, SVOD and AVOD, and even though you don't know what's going to you at least say, this is what we think. We can get pre-sales here. We can sell these territories in our domestic. We think this is what we could do here. And, because of this actor, this genre, just be able to have an answer. And one that, look, you believe in it, it's true. It's a passion. You got to be persistent about, but you got to have a plan.
Yeah, 100%. Any, before we wrap up here, any recent clients that have finished films that we can look out for in the near future?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The Cheech and Chong, Cheech and Chong's last movie,
You worked on
premiered at
that?
South. I'm sorry.
You worked on that?
Yeah, we did the
I've heard
production
about
legal.
that. There's a little bit of buzz
Yeah,
going.
it's got a lot of buzz. It had its premiere at South by Southwest in March. The reviews have been fantastic. It's a great cap to the obviously legendary careers of Tommy and Cheech. So that'll be coming out. Exact date to be determined, but next year.
Congrats.
So the Cheech and Chong's last movie, and then another film for another one of our clients. It's called Broken Bird, supernatural thriller horror. It was the opening film. It has world premiere. It was the opening film at Fright Fest London last week. And I believe right now it's 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. The reviews have been phenomenal. I've seen it. It is a really well done film. It is eerie. And that'll
Congrats.
also be coming out shortly. It just had its festival premiere, so its release date is pending, but that'll be coming out shortly. That'll be coming out shortly as well.
Awesome. Any parting words of advice for people going out there looking for money right now? Any final
It's
words?
challenge. Yeah, it's challenging right now. You got to be even better than maybe you were before because a little while ago money was a little more free because there was streamers and so forth were acquiring almost anything because during the streaming wars it was all about acquiring as many subscribers as possible, so they were just buying everything. They were making all kinds of product that wasn't very good because it's just about aggregating subscribers. Well, but out the strikes, and they finally figured out we don't know how we're making money on this, so acquisitions are way down. So if you're looking, you really got to drill down and you got to make your budgets as little as you can. You have to really be able to your numbers now because you can't expect Netflix is going to buy it because even though like they're still acquiring, they're acquiring for less. The terms are not as good as they were 2 years ago from anybody. And and we've seen what happens in theaters. Cinema is still being figured out. Some weekend absolute
Yeah, well,
blockbuster like
they're tent poles. They're big box office studio
yeah,
films. They're not necessarily
exactly.
independents going to theaters, right?
Yeah, and theatrical. So it's a little funny for theatrical right now because for independents because to put the money behind it, the P&A, the print and advertising money, that's that do you go theatrical? It can drive streaming, but the wide release is unlikely. There's other alternatives. So we are in the midst of a change in distribution right now. We're in it right now. No one really knows what's going to be like when we come out the other side, but I have clients who are working on release strategies because the days of where you had sales agents taking their cut and distributors taking their cut and exhibitors taking their cut, all these cuts and making it really hard for filmmakers to actually see money because everyone taking their chunk off the top. You now have these methods where you're making these middlemen and release on other, whether it's these different platforms that are available, or just methods that are a little more clever. Like, for example, someone that knows Sony Entertainment acquired Draft House, Alamo Draft Houses, with 36 locations across the country. And so you have, well, maybe you just do a limited theatrical 36 locations one weekend just to drive awareness, because you can have your social media blasting that, and that's something you even it's something when you see something that Matt Damon, Ben Affleck did, that can be applicable to getting name actors a project, is artist equity, where you pay, everybody gets paid a little bit less, but everyone gets a piece. So everyone is invested. So your budgets come down, which make it maybe easier to recoup your budget and see profitability. And everyone's invested, from the name actors, the director, the producers, down to the production assistants. So
You're
the model is changing about both production and distribution, and filmmakers need to know about that when they're out there trying to get money from people. They need to know that the game's changing, and they need to learn the new rules of the game.
so what you're seeing, I'm guessing most or all of your clients are tightening their budgets, correct?
Yes, we're seeing that you need to figure out a way to do the same thing for less money, because the acquisition money is just not there. Everyone, because as you say, no one's really sure what's going to happen. What is cinema, going to, what is that going to be like? What's going to happen with the streaming? Because the acquisition, because the streamers, they overbought so much, they're dumping content. They're Warner Brothers is a great example, where they had the Batwoman movie that they spent, I think, $93 million.
Yeah,
Instead of spending more money to release it, they just threw it in the trash.
yeah.
So they have more content. They're not really looking to buy more. So you got to be really clever about it. And there are opportunities, much like production became cheaper with the advent of technology like video, where you don't have to film anymore, 35 millimeter film, the
Hugely
Panavision
cheaper,
cameras,
hugely
all that.
cheaper.
Yeah, and now distribution. And look, you can figure out ways to self-distribute. There's companies out there that are helping with you, where you can put them on a platform, and you can have these very nuanced, these clever ways of doing it, where, okay, you can just watch the film 99. But if you watch the film and you want a t-shirt, it's 15.99. If you want to watch the film, get a t-shirt and a hat, it's 29.99. And you could conceivably do that on any number one of these platforms. And there's companies out there that are helping filmmakers do that, coming ways that you don't have to have huge amounts of P&A to get it out there. With you have social media that doesn't cost money. It's not billboards, that costs $5,000 or $10,000 a month on, Sunset Boulevard or something like that. So there are different ways to do it. So they got to know about distribution. They got to understand it better,
Lot
because
of exciting distribution options. James, we're a little bit over time. Thank you so
oh,
much for all your wise words of advice. What is the best way that people can follow you or contact you?
best way to contact us is to go to our the firm's website, which is creativelaw.com, just like it sounds, creativelaw.com. And on there is the firm's phone number and email address. You can contact us through there. And if anyone is assistance, initial consultation is always free. And then we'll discuss how we may be able to help you out.
Say that last sentence again. I want everyone to hear that.
The initial consultation is free. And it's not a forum to get free legal advice. It's for us to talk to you. It doesn't talk to us when you come to us and say, this is what I need. I need production legal. I need a distribution agreement reviewed. We talk to you about it. We find out what legal assistance you need, and we let you know how much that assistance will cost. And then we see if we can help you out with whatever issue you may have.
Great. Thank you so much, James Pacitti. I recommend you highly. And thanks again for your time.
Scott, thanks so much. Always a pleasure seeing you, and have a great day.
It's time!
There's never been a better time to make your own film. And if you have a dream project you're excited about and 100% committed to getting it funded, go to financeyourmovie.com, click on the green telephone, you'll see our calendar and find an open spot. We'll do a one-on-one call, which will be the best hour you've ever spent getting clarity and strategy towards financing your movie.